Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're taking a deep dive into some really perplexing missing person cases.
Yeah, really haunting ones.
Specifically, we're focusing on two individuals, Christy Garrard from Boaz, Alabama, and Lauren Spierer from Bloomington, Indiana. Their disappearances have just, lingered for years.
Absolutely.
Our mission here is to try and piece together the narratives. We're looking at everything, official reports, family pleas, online discussions.
All those different threads.
Exactly. To understand the circumstances, the questions that are still hanging out there, and, well, the huge impact on the people left behind.
Mm-hmm.
You'll hear details that maybe go beyond the headlines, hopefully shedding some light on just how complex and frustrating these kinds of cases can be when answers just don't come.
And what's fascinating, really, is how looking at these diverse sources can sort of illuminate the common threads in what are, at their core, these deeply human mysteries. We'll explore not just what might have happened based on the info we have, but also the enduring question of why it matters so much, you
Right.
know? Especially when the details hint at foul play or difficult social stuff, but there's just no resolution.
Okay, let's start with Christy Garrard. This goes back to August 1998
Huh?
in Boaz, Alabama.
Right.
Christy Lynn Garrard, she was only 24, last seen around 9 a.m. The date is a bit fuzzy, maybe August 14th, maybe the 15th.
Okay.
She was on Roden Avenue in Boaz with a
Yeah.
male friend, Philip Kilpatrick. She spent the night at his place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Philip said he took Christy to her aunt's house. They were in a white pickup truck. But here's the thing.
What's that?
No family members ever saw her there at the aunt's house.
Oh, wow. Okay, so right away there's a major inconsistency.
Exactly. That's a huge issue right from the start, isn't it?
Yeah.
Trying to pin down that timeline.
Absolutely. It throws everything into question immediately.
All right.
What else do we know about Christy?
Well, she was a mother. She had two kids. Described as divorced, kind of a free spirit, someone who went her own way. But, and this seems really crucial, despite that free spirit thing, her mother, Debbie Morrison, was clear. Christy always made sure her kids were cared for.
Mm-hmm. Responsible in that core way.
Yeah, and she always called her parents every few days. Always.
That consistency is key.
Totally. In fact, she called her son just 2 days before she disappeared, promised him they'd go bowling the next day.
A promise she never kept.
Ever kept. Her mom, Debbie, also mentioned very candidly that Christy had a drug problem and she always ran with a rough bunch of people.
Right. That adds another layer of complexity, unfortunately.
Physically, she was about 5'5", 110 pounds, green eyes, reddish-brown hair, maybe some blonde highlights, pierced ears, and a really distinctive tattoo. Mickey Mouse on her left shoulder.
That tattoo detail is important for identification, obviously. But that regular contact with her parents, that feels like the real anchor here.
I agree. It underlines that this wasn't just someone drifting off. It was completely out of character.
Which is usually the first sign for families, isn't it? That gut feeling that something is terribly wrong long before officials might take it seriously.
And the family search for answers, for closure.
Hmm.
It's just heartbreaking. Her parents reported her missing after about a week once they realized that silence was just not Christy.
A whole week. That must have been agony.
Her father, Olin Morrison, used to be the Boaz fire chief. He stated very firmly he believes she was murdered. He said, "By working so close with the police department, I do know that she is not coming back home, that she has been murdered."
That's a terribly certain statement from a father. Devastating.
It really is. And get this, the family visits a tombstone for Christy in a local cemetery.
But Olin's body hasn't been found.
No, her body isn't buried there. It just highlights that awful lack of closure. Olin said it so powerfully, you look for closure. And that's what a funeral and a burial is for, is closure. And there's been no closure. She's lying somewhere.
God, that image. It's just raw. Placing a marker without remains, it's like creating a place to grieve when the world hasn't given you one.
He searched tirelessly. He even wrote a song called Jesus, My Brothers and Me, sort of as therapy, he said, for the bitterness.
Wow. That's channeling pain into something, I suppose, and her mother.
Debbie Morrison's grief is just as raw. She noted that Philip Kilpatrick's parents hired a lawyer pretty quickly, she felt, to hinder any more questioning of him.
Ah, the lawyering up. That always complicates things from the outside perspective.
Right. And she believes Philip knows who did it. She said, "I know in my heart she has been murdered, but I would like to know where her remains are at. Our lives have forever changed, and I fear will never be the same." She even said directly, speaking sort of to Christie, I know who and why they took your precious life away us.
That direct accusation born from grief and frustration, it's palpable. You feel that deep conviction.
Now, the investigation itself, it's been, well, a tough road. Lots of efforts, lots of dead ends.
As is often the case in these long-term cold cases.
Yeah. Back in January '99, a teenager, 16 years old, came forward claiming he knew where she was killed. Led police to search near Cross Creek. Nope. Turned out his story was false. Then, later that year, November '99, another tip, another search, this time near Guntersville. Again, nothing.
Frustrating. False leads can be almost as painful as no leads.
Definitely. Then, jump forward to February 2011, a fisherman finds a human skull in Lake Guntersville.
Oh, wow. That must have felt like, maybe this is it.
Exactly. Boaz police were called. They needed dental records. There was that flicker of hope,
Yeah.
But ultimately, no definitive link to Christie was established. The remains were sent off to a forensics lab.
Another hope raised, then dashed. That cycle is just brutal for families.
It really is. The Boaz police chief, Terry Davis, acknowledged it's a cold case, but he insisted they still get leads. He said, we've got ideas of what went on, but we need to get some solid evidence, and he stressed, haven't given up.
Which is important for the family to hear, I imagine, but ideas aren't evidence.
No. And for the family, there was another blow in July 2011. The lead detective, Gary Stanfield, was transferred. Debbie Morrison felt that loss keenly, saying he had promised me the first day he would never stop working her case.
Oof. Losing that personal connection, that consistent point person in the investigation. That's tough.
Yeah. And then there are the other struggles, the ones that aren't just emotional, the legal and financial hurdles.
Ah, yes, the limbo of a missing person.
Right. At the time, Alabama law had this 7-year waiting period before you could declare a missing person legally dead if there was no body.
7 years, that's a long time to wait for any kind of legal finality.
It had real consequences. Christie's son, Christian, was living with his grandparents, Christie's parents. But because she wasn't legally declared dead, he wasn't eligible for death benefits.
Oh, that's just awful. Adding financial hardship on top of everything else.
But get this, her daughter, Carissa, had been adopted by her other grandparents, and she qualified for Social Security benefits.
Wow. So the system created this disparity between her own children based on legal technicalities.
Exactly. It spurred Debbie Morrison to action. She lobbied hard to change that law, to shorten the waiting period for a probate court declaration of death from 5 years. It seems there was some confusion or change over time, down to 36 months.
Trying to make it easier for other families facing that nightmare.
Yeah, trying to prevent others from going through that specific financial pain on top of the grief.
It really shows how our legal systems often just aren't built to handle the profound ambiguity of these cases, are they? Families end up fighting bureaucracy while they're grieving.
It's like adding insult to injury. And throughout all this, the family was also trying to get information out there, offering rewards.
Makes sense. They're trying anything.
Initially, they posted a $10,000 reward for information leading to her recovery. Then, in November 2006, there was a bigger push, part of a national campaign, offering $100,000 for info during a specific 20-day window.
A huge sum. Did anything come of it?
It doesn't seem like it led to a breakthrough, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Still no Christie. Still no answers. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Maybe not interesting, but
Yeah.
illuminating. You see these patterns emerging, right?
Definitely.
The deep personal toll, the struggle with legal systems that just aren't set up for this kind of prolonged uncertainty, and that desperate need for a clear answer.
Yeah. Closure is such an inadequate word sometimes, but that's what they're seeking.
Right. So let's shift now to Lauren Spierer, another young woman whose disappearance left a similar kind of void, but the details here are quite different and just as perplexing in their own way.
It's true. Lauren Spierer's case has that same core of family anguish, the same unanswered questions we saw with Christie. But the circumstances, the setting, Bloomington, Indiana, a college town, and the people involved, it presents a whole different set of challenges.
Absolutely. Lauren Spierer, she was 20 years old, an Indiana University student originally from New York. She vanished in the early hours of June 3rd, 2011.
Okay, so much more recent than Christie's case.
Right. She'd spent the night out drinking with friends at a place called Kilroy's Sports Bar. There's surveillance footage showing her leaving the bar with a guy named Corey Rossman.
Mm-hmm.
And the descriptions of her state at that time are concerning. She was seen as extremely intoxicated, stumbling, distressed, incoherent, and non-responsive.
That level of intoxication is a huge red flag right there. Makes her incredibly vulnerable.
Totally. And somehow during the night, she lost her sandals, maybe left them at the bar's sandbox beach area, which is a thing apparently. She also lost her keys and her cell phone.
Losing all her essentials, keys, phone, shoes. She's basically stranded and incapacitated.
Pretty much. Let's try and trace the timeline, the people involved.
Hmm?
Lauren was with her roommate Hadar and another friend until about 12:30 a.m.
Okay.
Then Lauren went to Kilroy's. That's where she met up with Corey Rossman, his roommate Mike Beth, and their friend Jay Rosenbaum.
Got it. The group she was last seen with.
Right. Now, Corey Rossman allegedly encouraged her to drink more, maybe even gave her more alcohol despite how drunk she clearly already was.
That's troubling.
Yeah. So later, they head back towards Lauren's apartment building, Smallwood Plaza. On the way, or right there, Rossman gets punched by some other student. Unrelated, it seems, but adds to the chaos.
Just a chaotic night all around.
Then there's surveillance video showing Rossman helping Lauren out of her own building. She's really unsteady and basically carrying her slung across his back towards his place, his townhouse.
Wait, out of her building? Why take her away from her own apartment?
Good question. So they get to Rossman and Beth's place. Mike Beth finds them there. He's apparently concerned about Lauren's condition and tries to get her to just sleep it off on their couch.
Okay, that sounds like a reasonable suggestion, given her state.
But Lauren insisted she wanted to go back to her own apartment.
Despite being barely able to walk, it sounds like.
Right. So instead of taking her back to Smallwood, Mike Beth escorts her to the third friend's place, Jay Rosenbaum's apartment.
Why Rosenbaum's? This seems unnecessarily complicated.
It does. So Rosenbaum is also apparently concerned. He tries calling some mutual friends, maybe to get someone else to take care of her, take her home. No luck.
Okay.
And then he allowed Spierer to leave his residence on her own.
Allowed her to leave.
Yeah.
Alone, in that condition, at 4:30 in the morning.
That's the account. He said he briefly witnessed her walking in the direction of 11th Street and College Avenue at approximately 4:30 a.m. Jay Rosenbaum is cited as the last known person with Spierer while she was alive.
Wow. That decision to let her walk off alone, that's become a huge focal point, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And interestingly, it wasn't her roommate who reported her missing.
No. Who was it?
Her boyfriend. He couldn't reach her the next day, called her phone, and someone from Kilroy's bar staff answered it. She'd left it there. That's when the alarm bells really went off for him. Her roommate, Hadar, didn't report her missing.
The fact that her boyfriend initiated the alarm, not the roommate or the friends she was last with, that adds another layer of questions.
It really does. And the silence from those friends, Corey Rossman, Mike Beth, Jay Rosenbaum, became almost immediate and, well, definite.
They all lawyered up very quickly, right?
Very quickly, and have largely stayed silent ever since. Rossman initially claimed he had amnesia about the last moments with Lauren because he was punched earlier.
Okay.
But later, he denied saying that, blamed his lawyer for putting that story out, and even accused Lauren's parents of harassing him.
That's quite a turnaround. Anne Rosenbaum, the last one to see her.
His story apparently evolved a bit over time, according to private investigators the Spierers hired. Initially, he just saw her walk off down the street, but in a later interview, maybe the third one, he mentioned potentially seeing a shadowy figure near her at the corner.
A shadowy figure, that's a significant addition later on, raises questions about what he really saw or didn't see, or maybe what he's comfortable saying.
Exactly. Lauren's parents, Charlene and Robert Spierer, have been incredibly vocal, understandably. They've openly criticized these young men for withholding information, for refusing to take polygraph tests. They've pleaded for them to just end the silence.
You can absolutely feel their desperation and frustration, this wall of silence from the people who last saw their daughter. It's unimaginable.
They even filed a civil lawsuit against Rossman, Rosenbaum, and Beth.
On what grounds?
Alleging their actions, specifically negligence and abandoning her while she was so intoxicated in an area known for crime, resulted in the disappearance, injury, and death of Lauren Elizabeth Spierer.
A civil suit seeking accountability where maybe the criminal investigation stalled.
Right. And they also launched a campaign for something called Lauren's Law.
What's that?
They started a petition advocating for laws that would require persons of interest, in cases like this, to take a police-administered polygraph test, trying to find ways to compel information.
That tension again, between legal rights, like the right to remain silent or refuse a polygraph, and the family's desperate need for answers, it's a fundamental conflict in these situations.
Definitely. Okay, let's talk theories. Because with this lack of solid information, speculation has run rampant.
Naturally. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does public interest in a mystery like this.
The most common theory, especially among students in Bloomington at the time and online commentators, is overdose and cover-up.
Okay, explain that.
Well, Lauren had a known serious heart condition, long QT syndrome. It affects the heart's electrical rhythm,
Right.
and it's known to be sensitive to things like heavy drinking, lack of sleep, and potentially drugs like cocaine or marijuana substances often present in a college party scene.
Okay, so the theory is.
The theory is that maybe, tragically, she suffered a medical event, possibly an overdose or a cardiac event triggered by the night's activities, while with one or more of the friends.
And then panic set in.
Exactly. Panic, fear of legal trouble may be related to supplying drugs, or just being present for an accidental death, leading them to dispose of her body and clam up.
The lawyering up fits that narrative potentially, but
But, as you hinted, the counterargument is, could a group of college kids really maintain that kind of secret, that kind of conspiracy, for over a decade now, without anyone cracking?
it requires an incredible level of, well, cohesion and silence under immense pressure and scrutiny. It's plausible, but it's also a significant psychological burden to maintain.
It is. So another major theory is stranger abduction or foul play.
Giving her vulnerability that night.
Precisely. She was incapacitated, alone on the street at 4:30 a.m. A prime target, sadly. Jay Rosenbaum's late mention of a shadowy figure could support this. There was speculation about various individuals. One was a local man described as a mentally ill gun enthusiast who lived just a block away, apparently known for stalking women and having a locked basement. Scary stuff, but maybe circumstantial.
Right. Proximity and odd behavior don't equal guilt, but they certainly fuel speculation when there are no other answers.
And then there's the Israel Keys theory.
Ah, the serial killer connection. That comes up in various unsolved cases.
It does. Keys traveled extensively, had family connections in Indiana, and his known timeline doesn't definitively rule out him being in the area. But again,
Highly circumstantial, no concrete evidence linking him to Lauren.
exactly. It's more about filling the void with a known predator. And then there's the criticism of the police investigation itself.
Yeah, you mentioned that. What are the main criticisms?
Frustration over things like not releasing all the surveillance video evidence, a perception, fair or not, that maybe they were protecting the persons of interest, or just a general sense of inability to crack the case. It led to a lot of anger from the family and the public.
That breakdown of trust between the family, the public, and the investigation is sadly common in long, drawn-out cases like this. It feeds the speculation even more.
It does. And, sometimes in these wider discussions about missing young people, especially college-age men found deceased in water, you hear theories like the smiley face killers.
Right, that controversial theory about a supposed network of killers drowning young men and leaving graffiti nearby. Mostly dismissed by law enforcement, but
But it shows how people try to find patterns, try to find external explanations, especially organized ones, when the official narrative is just, we don't know. It speaks to that need to make sense of the senseless.
Exactly. It's a way of grappling with the randomness and horror of it all, even if the theory itself doesn't hold water under scrutiny.
And through all of this, the theories, the investigation, the silence, the weight on Lauren's family is just immense, unbearable.
Yeah.
Her parents, Charlie and Robert, they basically uprooted their lives, lived in Bloomington for months, coordinating searches, hiring PIs.
Completely consumed by the search.
Charlene still gets Lauren's cell phone bill delivered. She hasn't been able to bring herself to move Lauren's college boxes out of storage. It's like time is frozen for her in that respect.
Those little details, the phone bill, the boxes, they speak volumes about the ongoing daily pain.
Robert has talked about how seeing young women with blonde ponytails on the street is just agony for him, a constant reminder. They still hold out hope, they say, for a crisis of conscience from someone who knows something.
That hope, however faint, is what keeps them going, I suppose. It's all they have. Looking at both these deep dives, Christy Garrard and Lauren Spierer, it just powerfully highlights the incredible strength, but also the heartbreaking reality for families of the missing.
The resilience is amazing.
It is, but they also really underscore that critical challenge, especially for law enforcement, when the people last seen with the missing person choose silence or they lawyer up.
Yeah, what do you do then?
Well, in cases like these, right, where physical evidence might be scarce, or maybe those initial crucial hours or days were missed, that human testimony becomes absolutely vital. It's paramount.
And when it's withheld.
The investigation can just stall indefinitely.
Yeah.
And all those theories we talked about with Lauren, the overdose cover-up, stranger abduction, even the more speculative ones like Israel Keys, They really illustrate the desperate attempt to find some logical explanation when those primary accounts, those firsthand witnesses, are limited or just uncooperative.
Hmm.
But what also stands out, despite all that, is just the sheer tenacity, isn't it, of the families, the communities. They refuse to let these people be forgotten. They keep pushing, even when the official paths seem like dead ends.
That's true. They become the investigators, the advocates.
Absolutely.
So thinking about all this, what does it mean for you listening? These deep dives into Christy Garrard and Lauren Spierer, they show that seeking truth, seeking knowledge, it isn't always about getting that neat, tied-up answer.
No, often it's not.
Sometimes it's more about understanding the complexities of the unknown, isn't it? The profound weight of uncertainty and seeing that relentless human spirit that just keeps searching. For these families, you realize the search isn't a past event. It's active, it's ongoing, it's filled with emotional hurdles, legal battles.
Day in, day out.
Yeah, and it really reminds you how vital every single detail, every memory, every small recollection could potentially be, especially when you're facing what feels like just an impenetrable wall of silence.
Which brings up a really important question, I think. In today's world, we're drowning in information, right?
Yeah.
So how do we, as a society, make sure that cases like these, the ones that lack those definitive answers, don't just get buried, don't just fade away into some archive?
Yeah, how do we keep them present?
And maybe more fundamentally, how do we balance that need for privacy, for legal protections, which are important, with the desperate, basic human need for truth, for resolution? Especially when it involves a child, a young person whose life was cut short, leaving these questions that echo for decades.